The lobby was quiet at 11 p.m., just the way Robert liked it. He sat behind the old wooden desk, his security uniform neat despite the frayed edges on the sleeves. The building was one of those tall office towers downtown, all glass and steel, where important people worked during the day. But at night it belonged to him in the silence. Robert was 52 years old, but some days he felt 70. His back ached from standing too long, and his feet hurt in the cheap shoes he'd been wearing for almost 2 years. He couldn't afford new ones yet. Not with everything else he had to pay for. 2 years ago, his world had fallen apart. His wife, the love of his life, had passed away after a short illness. It happened so fast that Robert barely had time to process it. One day she was there laughing at dinner, and 6 weeks later she was gone. Just like that. He was left alone with their daughter Lily, who was only 14 at the time. If losing his wife wasn't hard enough, 6 months later came another blow. Lily started having chest pains at school. The doctors ran tests, then more tests, and finally told Robert something that made his heart sink. His daughter had a chronic heart condition. She would need medication for the rest of her life, maybe even surgery someday. The medical bills started piling up immediately. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. There were co-pays, specialist visits, and medications that cost more than Robert made in a week. He watched the numbers in his bank account drop lower and lower, like sand falling through his fingers. That's when he took the second job. During the day, he worked security at a shopping mall across town. Then he'd rush home, make dinner for Lily, help her with homework, and head out again for his night shift at the office building. He slept maybe 4 hours a day, sometimes less. Coffee became his best friend. Robert used to be a different person. Before all this happened, he had dreams. He'd gone to college for 3 years, studying to become a teacher. He loved the idea of helping kids learn, of making a difference in their lives. But then life got expensive. His father got sick and he had to drop out to help his family. He always told himself he'd go back someday. That someday never came. Instead, he got married, had Lily, and settled into security work. It paid the bills mostly. He told himself he was happy, and he was really. He had his wife, his daughter, and that was enough. But now, sitting in that empty lobby night after night, he sometimes wondered about the life he could have had. He'd see young people in business, suits walking through confident and successful, and think about the classroom he'd never teach in, the students he'd never inspire. Still, Robert never let it show. Every person who walked through those doors got the same warm smile, the same friendly greeting. It didn't matter if they were the CEO or the janitor. Robert treated everyone with respect. That's just who he was. His uniform told a story, though. The navy blue fabric had faded to a lighter shade after years of washing. There was a small stain on the pocket that never quite came out, no matter how hard he scrubbed. His name tag was scratched and dull. The shoes, well, they were held together more by hope than by the worn leather. The sole on the left one had a hole, and when it rained, his sock got wet. But Robert kept everything as clean and pressed as possible. He had his dignity, even if he didn't have much else. Lily was doing okay considering everything. She was 16 now, a junior in high school. Smart as a whip, her teacher said. She wanted to be a veterinarian, loved animals more than anything. But Robert worried constantly. Could they afford college? Would her health hold up? What would happen to her if something happened to him? The medication helped, but it wasn't a cure. Some days Lily felt fine, energetic and normal. Other days she was exhausted, pale, struggling to catch her breath. Those were the days that terrified Robert. He'd watch her sleep, making sure her chest was rising and falling steadily, unable to shake the fear that gripped his heart. The bills kept coming. Electric, rent, groceries, medication, doctor visits. Robert had a notebook where he tracked every penny. He'd sit at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed, moving numbers around like puzzle pieces, trying to make them fit. They never quite did. He was always a little short, always borrowing from one thing to pay for another. He'd stopped buying new clothes for himself 2 years ago. Lily needed things for school, and that came first. Always. He ate less, so she could eat more. When she asked why he wasn't hungry, he'd smile and say he'd had a big lunch. It was a lie. Most days, lunch was a pack of crackers from the vending machine. But Robert never complained. Not to Lily, not to anyone. What good would it do? This was his life now, and he'd accepted it. He'd do whatever it took to give his daughter a chance at a better future than his. The night shift was long and lonely. Between midnight and 6 in the morning, hardly anyone came through. It was just Robert, the hum of the building's heating system, and his thoughts. Sometimes he'd read. He loved books, always had. The library became his escape. He couldn't afford to buy books, but the library let him borrow as many as he wanted. Other nights, he'd study the people who did come through. The late-night workers, the cleaning crew, the occasional businessman pulling an all-nighter. He wondered about their lives, their stories. Everyone had one. Robert had learned something over the years. You never really know what someone is going through. That businessman in the expensive suit might be going through a divorce. That cleaning lady might be supporting her entire family. Everyone was fighting some kind of battle. So he smiled at them all. Sometimes that smile was all he had to give, but he gave it freely. It cost him nothing and might mean something to someone having a bad day. Little did Robert know, one of those smiles, one small decision to help someone, was about to change everything. His whole life was about to shift in ways he couldn't imagine, all because he chose to be kind when he didn't have to be. But that night, sitting at his desk, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos, Robert didn't know any of this yet. He was just a tired security guard trying to make it through another shift, counting down the hours until he could go home and check on his sleeping daughter. It was a Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock when everything changed. Robert had just started his shift, settling into his usual spot behind the desk. Outside, the sky had opened up. Rain was coming down in sheets, the kind that soaks you through in seconds. He was updating the logbook when the front door burst open. A woman rushed in, completely drenched. Her hair was plastered to her face and water dripped from her clothes onto the marble floor. She was breathing hard like she'd been running. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," she muttered, digging frantically through her purse. Robert stood up. "Evening, ma'am, everything okay?" She looked up at him, and he could see the panic in her eyes. "My access card. I can't find my access card. I have a presentation in 15 minutes on the 14th floor, and She trailed off, dumping the contents of her purse onto the counter. Wallet, phone, keys, loose change, receipts. No card. I must have left it at home. Or maybe it fell out in the rain. I don't know. Her voice was shaking now, close to tears. This presentation is so important. I've been working on it for months. Robert understood that kind of pressure. He'd seen it before in this building. People worked hard. Sometimes everything rode on one meeting, one presentation, one moment. He glanced at the sign-in sheet. Protocol was clear. No card, no entry. He was supposed to call their office, verify their identity, wait for approval. It could take 30 minutes, sometimes more. She'd miss her presentation for sure. But something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the genuine desperation in her voice. Maybe it was the medical journal he noticed tucked under her arm, getting soaked. Or maybe it was just that Robert knew what it felt like when everything was falling apart and you needed someone to give you a break. "What floor did you say?" he asked. 14th, conference room B. "Please, I know this is against the rules, but let me see some ID," Robert interrupted gently. She fumbled for her wallet and pulled out her driver's license. Dr. Catherine Hayes. The address matched the building's records for Suite 1420. Robert made a decision. "Okay, Dr. Hayes, I'll escort you up personally, but we need to move fast." The relief on her face was immediate. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means." They hurried to the elevator. As they rode up, Catherine tried to wring out her blazer. She was still breathing hard, clearly stressed about being late. "What kind of presentation is it?" Robert asked, trying to help her calm down. "Medical research. I'm a pediatric cardiologist. We've been developing a new treatment protocol for children with heart conditions." She laughed nervously. I've presented at conferences before, but tonight we're pitching to potential donors. Could mean funding for the next 5 years. Robert's hands tightened on his flashlight. Pediatric cardiology, that's hearts, right? In kids? Yes, exactly. Catherine was checking her phone, probably reviewing her notes. My daughter, Robert said quietly. She has a heart condition. She's 16. Something in his voice made Catherine look up. Really look at him. Not just at the uniform, but at the person wearing it. I'm so sorry, she said. And she meant it. What's her diagnosis, if you don't mind me asking? Robert told her. He hadn't planned to. He usually kept his personal life private. But something about this woman, maybe the genuine concern in her eyes, made him open up. He explained about Lily's condition, the medications, the constant worry. Catherine listened. She didn't interrupt or offer empty platitudes. She just listened, nodding occasionally. When the elevator dinged at the 14th floor, she pulled a business card from her purse and scribbled something on the back. This is my direct number, she said, handing it to him. And on the back I've written the name of a colleague, one of the best pediatric cardiologists in the state. Have your daughter's doctor send over her records. I can't promise anything, but maybe we can help. Robert stared at the card. I don't know what to say. You just saved my career, possibly. It's the least I can do. She smiled at him, a real smile. What's your name? Robert. Thank you, Robert, really. She hurried down the hallway toward the conference room, and Robert rode the elevator back down. He sat at his desk, turning the business card over in his hands. It felt too good to be true. People said things like that all the time, didn't they? Especially when they were grateful. But they didn't really mean it. Still, he tucked the card carefully into his wallet. The rest of the shift passed normally. Robert did his rounds, checked the empty floors, made sure all the doors were locked. Around midnight, he ate the sandwich he'd packed. Peanut butter and jelly. Lily had made it for him before he left, adding a little note that said, "Love you, Dad," with a smiley face. He smiled at that note like he did every time. These small things, these little moments, they kept him going. When his shift ended at 6 in the morning, Robert drove home through the quiet streets. The rain had stopped and the city was just starting to wake up. He thought about Dr. Hayes and her presentation. He hoped it had gone well. At home, he found Lily already awake, getting ready for school. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. She'd had trouble sleeping again. Morning, sweetheart, Robert said, kissing the top of her head. How are you feeling? Okay, she said, but he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Just tired? He made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. She only ate half. Robert didn't say anything, but he worried. She'd been having more bad days lately. After she left for school, he tried to sleep, but his mind kept going back to that business card in his wallet. Should he call? Would it seem pushy? What if it was just an empty gesture? 3 days passed. Robert went to work, came home, took care of Lily. The card stayed in his wallet. He'd take it out sometimes, look at it, then put it back. He didn't want to get his hopes up. On Friday afternoon, he was sleeping when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Unknown number, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Robert Williams? Yes. This is St. Catherine's Children's Hospital. I'm calling on behalf of Dr. Catherine Hayes. She's arranged for your daughter to be seen by Dr. Philip Morrison, our head of pediatric cardiology. Would next Tuesday at 2 o'clock work for you? Robert sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. I'm sorry, what? The voice on the other end was patient. Dr. Hayes asked us to call. She mentioned your daughter has a heart condition. Dr. Morrison would like to see her. There's no charge for the consultation. No charge? Robert's voice cracked. That's correct. Dr. Hayes has covered it. Can I confirm Tuesday at 2? Robert couldn't speak for a moment. His throat was tight, eyes burning. A stranger, someone he'd helped for 5 minutes, was doing this. For his daughter, for Lily. Yes, he finally managed. Yes, we'll be there. Thank you. After he hung up, Robert sat on the edge of his bed and cried. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried like this. Not sad tears, but something else. Relief maybe, or hope. Something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He'd held a door open, bent the rules a little, helped someone who needed it. And she hadn't forgotten. She'd actually called. Actually helped. Maybe, Robert thought, maybe things were going to be okay. Tuesday came faster than Robert expected. He'd taken the afternoon off from his day job, something he rarely did. Money would be tight this week, but this was more important. This was about Lily. St. Catherine's Children's Hospital was nothing like the clinic they usually went to. The building was modern, with large windows that let in natural light. Inside there were colorful murals on the walls, a play area for kids and staff members who smiled genuinely. It felt hopeful somehow. Lily sat next to him in the waiting room, fidgeting with her phone. She'd been quiet during the drive over. Robert knew she was nervous. She hated doctor appointments, hated being reminded that she was sick when all she wanted was to be normal. "Dad, what if they can't help?" she asked softly. Robert squeezed her hand. "Then we're no worse off than before. But what if they can?" A nurse called Lily's name, and they followed her down a bright hallway. Dr. Morrison's office was warm and comfortable, filled with pictures of smiling children and thank you cards from families. The doctor himself was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He spent over an hour with them. He asked Lily questions about her symptoms, her energy levels, what made things better or worse. He looked at all her old records, the tests from previous doctors. He listened, really listened, in a way that made Robert feel like they actually mattered. "I'm going to be honest with you both," Dr. Morrison finally said. "Lily's condition is serious, but I think we can help. We've been working on a new treatment protocol, and she might be a perfect candidate for it." Robert leaned forward. "What kind of treatment?" Dr. Morrison explained. It was complicated, involving a combination of newer medications and some lifestyle changes, but it had shown remarkable results in clinical trials. Kids who'd been struggling were living normal, active lives. "Now, I won't lie to you," the doctor continued. "This treatment is expensive. The medications alone would normally run several $1,000s a month." Robert's hope deflated like a balloon. Of course it would be expensive. Nothing good ever came cheap. "However," Dr. Morrison smiled, "we have a research program. If Lily agrees to be part of our study, the treatment would be completely free. We'd monitor her progress, use her data to help other kids. Everything would be covered." Robert couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Free, all of it?" "All of it, including regular checkups, medications, everything." Lily looked at her dad, then back at the doctor. "And this could really help me? I could feel normal again?" "I believe so," Dr. Morrison said. "I can't promise miracles, but the results we've seen have been very encouraging." They signed the papers right there. Lily started the new treatment the following week. Within a month, the difference was remarkable. She had more energy. The color came back to her cheeks. She didn't get winded walking upstairs anymore. For the first time in 2 years, Robert watched his daughter laugh without worrying that it would tire her out. She joined the school's art club, something she'd been wanting to do but never had the energy for. She stayed up late talking on the phone with friends. Normal teenage things that Robert had thought might never happen. But Dr. Catherine Hayes didn't stop there. She'd become involved in Lily's care, checking in regularly, genuinely interested in how things were going. One evening she called Robert directly. "I hope you don't mind," she said, "but I shared your story with some colleagues." Robert felt his stomach drop. "My story? About what you did for me that night. How you helped me even though you could have gotten in trouble. How you were working 2 jobs to take care of your daughter." Robert, people were moved by it. "I don't understand," Robert said. "I just did what anyone would do." Catherine laughed softly. "That's exactly why it mattered. You think everyone would do that, but they wouldn't. Most people would have followed the rules, played it safe. You chose to help." A few days later, Robert got a call at work. It was from Mr. Reynolds, the CEO of St. Catherine's Hospital. Robert's hands shook as he answered. CEOs didn't call security guards unless something was very wrong. "Mr. Williams," the CEO's voice was warm, "I'd like to meet with you. Would Thursday morning work?" Robert's mind raced. Was this about the bills? Had he missed something in the paperwork? "Yes, sir. Of course." Thursday morning, Robert put on his best shirt, the one he saved for special occasions. He arrived at the hospital early, hands sweating. A secretary led him to a large office with a view of the city. Mr. Reynolds stood and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming. Please sit down. Can I get you some coffee?" "No, thank you, sir. I'm fine." The CEO sat across from him, and to Robert's surprise, he smiled. "Relax, Robert. You're not in any trouble. Quite the opposite, actually. He explained that Dr. Hayes had told him everything, about the rainy night, about Robert's kindness, about his situation. The CEO had looked into Robert's background, learned about his partial college education, his work ethic, the fact that he was juggling 2 jobs. "We have an opening in our security department," Mr. Reynolds said. "Better pay than what you're making now, full benefits, and here's the important part. We have a program that helps employees finish their education. If you're interested, we'd cover your tuition." Robert stared at him. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. "I know it's a lot to take in," the CEO continued, "but I believe in recognizing good people when I see them. The way you've handled everything, the way you've taken care of your daughter, the character you showed that night with Dr. Hayes, that's the kind of person we want on our team." "I don't know what to say." Robert's voice was barely a whisper. "Say yes. Come work for us. Finish your degree. You wanted to be a teacher, right?" Robert nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Then let's make that happen," Robert accepted on the spot. He gave notice at both his old jobs, and 2 weeks later he started at St. Catherine's. The difference was immediate. He worked 1 job now, normal hours with Sundays off. He could actually sleep. He could eat regular meals, but more than that, people treated him differently here. The staff greeted him by name. Doctors and nurses stopped to chat with him. Dr. Hayes made a point of introducing him to everyone, telling them he was the reason her big presentation had succeeded. Other staff members heard his story and wanted to help. A teacher at the hospital's educational program offered free tutoring for Lily in science, her hardest subject. A financial counselor helped Robert navigate some of his old medical debt, finding programs that could forgive portions of it. Someone from the administration donated a bag of professional clothes that their husband had outgrown. It was overwhelming. Robert had spent so long struggling alone, and now suddenly there were all these people wanting to help. He didn't understand why. He hadn't done anything special, but Catherine explained it to him one day over coffee. "You showed kindness when it cost you something. That rainy night, you could have lost your job for letting me up without proper authorization, but you helped me anyway. That kind of goodness, Robert, it's rare, and it inspires people. They see you and they want to be better too." At night, after Lily went to bed, Robert would sit at the kitchen table and just breathe. His daughter was getting better. He had a good job. He was going to finish his degree. Sometimes he'd take out that business card, the one Catherine had given him that night. It was worn now, creased from being in his wallet. He'd look at it and shake his head in wonder. One small choice, one moment of kindness, and everything had changed. But Robert had no idea just how much more was about to change. This was only the beginning. Robert enrolled in classes that fall. He hadn't been in a classroom in almost 30 years, and the first day back felt terrifying. He was 52 years old, sitting in a lecture hall full of 20-year-olds who could have been his kids. His hands shook as he opened his notebook. What was he doing here? He'd forgotten how to be a student. The professor started talking about educational theory, and Robert scrambled to keep up with the notes. A young woman sitting next to him noticed his struggle. "First day back?" she whispered kindly. Robert nodded, embarrassed. "You'll get the hang of it," she smiled. "I'm retaking this class anyway, so if you need help, let me know." That small kindness meant everything. It reminded Robert that he wasn't alone, that other people were rooting for him. The first semester was brutal. Robert would work his shift at the hospital from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Then he'd rush to campus for evening classes that ran until 9. He'd get home exhausted and still have homework to do. Some nights he didn't sleep until 1 or 2 in the morning, but Lily kept him going. She'd quiz him on his flashcards while they ate dinner. She'd proofread his essays, pointing out mistakes with all the confidence of a teenager who thought she knew everything. She was so proud of him, and that pride pushed Robert forward even on the days he wanted to quit. "You're going to be a teacher, Dad," she'd say. "You're actually going to do it." At the hospital, something else was happening. Robert wasn't just another security guard anymore. People knew his story now, and they treated him like family. Catherine had introduced him to so many staff members that he couldn't keep track of all the names. One afternoon, a doctor named Vincent stopped by Robert's post. "Hey, I heard you're studying education. My kid is struggling in school, doesn't connect with his teachers. Would you mind talking to him sometime? I think he needs someone who understands what it's like to struggle." Robert agreed, and the following week he met with Vincent's son, a quiet 13-year-old named Tony, who felt invisible at school. Robert spent an hour just listening to him, sharing his own story about dropping out of college, about feeling like he'd failed. "But you went back," Tony said, eyes wide. "Even though you're old." "I mean, not old, but you know." Robert laughed. "Yeah, I'm old. But here's what I learned. It's never too late to try again. Never too late to be who you want to be." Word spread. Other staff members started asking Robert to talk to their kids, their nephews and nieces, young people who needed encouragement. Before long, Robert was mentoring half a dozen teenagers, meeting with them during his lunch breaks or after his shift. He loved it. This was what he was meant to do, he realized. Teaching didn't just happen in a classroom. It happened anywhere you could make a difference in someone's life. Catherine watched all this with satisfaction. One day she invited Robert to her office for lunch. "I have an idea," she said. "The hospital has been wanting to start a youth mentorship program. Something for at-risk kids, teenagers who need positive role models. Would you be interested in helping develop it?" "Me? But I'm not even a teacher yet." "You're teaching right now, Robert. Every day. You just don't call it that." She leaned forward. "Look, I've watched you with these kids. You have a gift. They listen to you because you've lived through hard things. You're real with them. That matters more than any teaching certificate." Robert helped design the program from the ground up. It would bring in teenagers from underserved communities, give them mentors, help them explore careers in healthcare, provide tutoring and support. The hospital would fund it entirely. When the program launched 6 months later, Robert was named the coordinator. It meant a raise, more responsibility, and best of all, it meant he could reduce his hours to focus more on his studies. The first group of kids who came through the program reminded Robert so much of himself at that age. They were hungry for someone to believe in them, to see their potential. He gave them what he wished someone had given him 30 years ago: hope and a path forward. One boy, David, had a similar story to Robert's. His mom was sick. They had no money, and he was thinking about dropping out of school to work. Robert sat with him for hours, helping him see other options. They found financial aid, connected his mom with better health care, got David into a work-study program so he could help his family without sacrificing his education. "You're changing that kid's life," Catherine told Robert one afternoon. "I'm just doing what you did for me," Robert replied, giving someone a chance. As his second year of school began, Robert found his rhythm. He was making A's and B's in his classes. The professors respected him, often asking him to share his perspective during discussions. His life experience gave him insights the younger students didn't have. Lily was thriving too. She was 17 now, a senior in high school, and her health was better than it had been in years. She'd started volunteering at an animal shelter, still dreaming of becoming a veterinarian. She had college applications spread across the kitchen table, and Robert would help her with her essays in between doing his own homework. "We're both going to college at the same time," she joked. "That's so weird." "Weird, but wonderful," Robert said. One evening, Robert received an email from Mr. Reynolds, the hospital CEO. He wanted Robert to speak at a staff meeting, to share his story with new employees. Robert's first instinct was to say no. He wasn't comfortable being in the spotlight. But he thought about all the people who'd helped him. Catherine, Dr. Morrison, Mr. Reynolds himself. They'd all taken risks to give him opportunities. Maybe his story could inspire someone else to do the same for someone in need. The morning of the staff meeting, Robert stood in front of a room full of doctors, nurses, and administrators. His hands were sweating, his voice shook at first, but he told his story. He talked about that rainy night when he'd helped Catherine, about being a struggling single father, about the kindness that had changed everything. "I was invisible for a long time," Robert said. "Just another security guard that people walked past without really seeing. But Dr. Hayes saw me. She saw past the uniform to the person underneath. And because of that, my whole life changed." He paused, looking around the room. "Now I want to challenge all of you. Look at the people around this hospital. The custodians, the cafeteria workers, the security guards. See them. Really see them. You never know who might be one small act of kindness away from changing their entire life." The room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Soon everyone was standing, applauding. Robert felt his eyes burning with tears. After the meeting, people came up to him all day. Some shared their own stories of struggle. Others thanked him for the reminder to be more aware, more kind. A nurse told him she'd been rude to a janitor that morning and went to apologize after hearing Robert speak. That night, driving home, Robert thought about the journey he'd been on. 2 years ago, he'd been drowning, barely keeping his head above water. Now he was a year away from getting his degree. His daughter was healthy. He was doing work that mattered, helping kids who needed it. And it all started because he'd chosen to help a stranger in the rain. Robert pulled into his driveway and sat in the car for a moment, just breathing it all in. The house lights were on. Lily was inside, probably doing homework. His life wasn't perfect. Money was still tight sometimes, and he still worried about things. But it was so much better than it had been. He thought about all the people who'd helped him along the way, each one adding another piece to his new life. And he thought about all the kids he was helping now, starting their own journeys. Kindness wasn't just one action, he realized. It was a ripple that kept spreading, touching more and more people, going further than you could ever imagine. And Robert's ripple was just getting started. The graduation ceremony was held on a bright Saturday morning in May. Robert stood in line with the other graduates, wearing his cap and gown, feeling both nervous and proud. At 54 years old, he was finally getting his bachelor's degree in education. He scanned the crowd and found them easily. Lily was in the third row, waving frantically, her phone up, recording everything. Next to her sat Catherine, who'd insisted on coming. She'd become more than just the doctor who'd helped his daughter. She was family now. When they called Robert's name, he walked across that stage with his head high. The applause seemed louder for him than for the others. Or maybe that was just his imagination. He shook the dean's hand, accepted his diploma, and for a moment, he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd accomplished. This piece of paper represented 3 years of late nights, early mornings, exhaustion, and determination. It represented every time he'd wanted to quit but didn't. Every time Lily had encouraged him. Every person who'd believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. After the ceremony, Lily threw her arms around him. "You did it, Dad. You actually did it." Catherine hugged him too. "I'm so proud of you, Robert. You've come so far." "I couldn't have done it without you," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "That night when you gave me your card, when you helped Lily, you gave us our lives back." "No." Catherine shook her head. "You gave yourself your life back. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and kept going." They took photos, hundreds of them. Robert with his diploma, Robert with Lily, Robert with Catherine. He wanted to remember this day forever, this feeling of accomplishment and joy. But graduation wasn't the end. It was just another beginning. The hospital offered Robert a full-time position as the director of youth education and mentorship. He'd oversee the program he'd helped build, expand it, develop new initiatives. It was exactly the kind of work he'd dreamed of doing when he was young and studying to be a teacher. His first major project was creating a scholarship fund, specifically for children of hospital support staff, the security guards, custodians, cafeteria workers, people who worked hard but didn't make much money, people like he used to be. "These families keep our hospital running," Robert explained at the board meeting where he pitched the idea. "Their work matters, and their kids deserve the same opportunities as everyone else." The board approved it immediately. Within months, they'd raised enough money to offer 5 full scholarships. Robert personally reviewed each application, and he cried reading some of them. These were his people. These were kids growing up just like Lily had, with parents working multiple jobs, struggling to make ends meet. When they announced the scholarship winners, Robert insisted on calling each family personally. He'd never forget the mother who broke down crying on the phone, thanking him over and over. Her daughter was the first person in their family who'd be able to go to college. "You're changing lives," Catherine told him. "I'm paying it forward," Robert replied. That's all. The mentorship program grew too. They went from serving 15 kids that first year to over 50 by the third year. Robert knew most of them by name, knew their stories, their struggles, their dreams. He'd meet with them after school on weekends whenever they needed him. One kid, a 17-year-old named Peter, reminded Robert especially of himself. Smart but defeated by life, ready to give up on his education, His father had left, his mother worked 3 jobs, and Peter felt like he had to quit school to help support his younger siblings. Robert worked with Peter for months. They found resources, applied for assistance, connected the family with programs that could help. Slowly, Peter started to believe that maybe he didn't have to sacrifice his future. Maybe there was another way. When Peter graduated high school and got accepted to a community college with a full scholarship, Robert was there in the audience cheering as loud as any parent. Peter found him afterward, tears streaming down his face. "You saved me, Mr. Williams. I was going to drop out. I was ready to give up on everything." Robert hugged him tight. "You saved yourself, Peter. I just reminded you that you could." Lily graduated from high school that same year and got accepted to the State University's veterinary science program. Her health was stable, her future bright. Robert watched her walk across the stage at her own graduation, and he thought about how close he'd come to losing her, how scared he'd been those first months after her diagnosis. Now look at her. Strong, healthy, confident, ready to chase her dreams. "I'm going to miss you," Robert told her the night before she left for college. "I'm only 2 hours away. Dad, I'll come home all the time." She paused. "Besides, you're going to be too busy helping all those kids to miss me too much." She was right. Robert's days were full now, packed with meaning and purpose. He'd started speaking at other organizations too, sharing his story, encouraging people to see the workers around them, to recognize that everyone has value regardless of their job title. A local news station did a feature on him. The story went viral online. Suddenly, Robert was getting emails from around the country, people sharing their own stories of struggle and kindness, thanking him for the reminder that small actions matter. One email came from a security guard in another state. He'd seen Robert's story and it had inspired him to go back to school. He was 58 years old and had always wanted to be a nurse. "If you can do it," he wrote, "then maybe I can too." Robert replied immediately, encouraging him, offering advice, promising to stay in touch. He understood now that his story wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who'd ever felt invisible, who'd ever struggled, who'd ever needed someone to believe in them. Catherine invited Robert to speak at a medical conference about the importance of seeing healthcare workers as whole people, not just their job functions. Hundreds of doctors and administrators listened as he told his story again. "I was drowning," Robert said to the audience, "working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, watching my daughter suffer, feeling invisible to the world. And then someone saw me. Someone chose kindness when they didn't have to. That choice didn't just change my life. It changed my daughter's life. It changed the lives of every kid I've been able to help since then. Kindness isn't just nice. It's powerful. It ripples out in ways you can't imagine." 5 years after that rainy night when he'd helped Catherine, Robert stood in the hospital lobby where he used to work security. They were having a ceremony to name the youth mentorship program after him. There was going to be a plaque with his name on it, funding secured for the next decade. He looked around at all the people who'd come. Catherine, of course, Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Morrison, staff members who'd become friends, kids from the program, past and present. Lily, home from college for the weekend, and in the back he noticed them. The current security guards, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the people doing the jobs he used to do. Some of them looked tired, probably working multiple jobs like he had. Some looked worried, carrying burdens he understood. Robert caught the eye of one security guard, a younger man who looked exhausted. Robert smiled at him, really looked at him, saw him as a person with dreams and struggles and value. The guard smiled back, surprised to be noticed. After the ceremony, Robert walked over to him. "Long shift?" "Yeah," the guard admitted. "Double shift today." "I've been there," Robert said. "I used to have your job, actually." "Worked nights for years," the guard's eyes widened. "You? But you're—" "Just a guy who got lucky," Robert said. "Someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. Changed everything." He pulled out a business card, his own now. "If you ever need anything or know someone who does, give me a call. Okay?" The guard took the card carefully like it was precious. "Thank you, sir." Robert patted his shoulder and walked away. He didn't know if that guard would call. Didn't know if he needed help or was perfectly fine. But he'd planted a seed. He'd seen him, and maybe that would matter. That night, Robert sat in his living room thinking about the journey, from that desperate, exhausted man working 2 jobs to who he was now, a college graduate, a program director, a mentor, someone who mattered, who made a difference. All because one rainy Tuesday, he'd chosen to be kind to a stranger, and that stranger had chosen to be kind back. Robert picked up his phone and texted Catherine, "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me." Her response came quickly, "Thank you for being someone worth seeing. The world is better because you're in it."